And then the video icon in the corner. Okay. So how's everybody been?
Good.
So that's really no sewer line there? It's in the alley, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like $10,000.
It comes down 19th there and then turns right into that alley.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a chance it comes out the side, maybe the 19th. I doubt it. The age of that building and
Yeah,
what's wrong with it.
nothing. We just have to tap into it, that's all. So we are leasing that office and just need to connect some drains because we want to do laundry in that lower area. And so we'd have to essentially tap into the drain going out. I mean, all works fine, just need to add a drain to it. So don't know what the best route of doing that is because mostly it's the angle of it. 'Cause I think I know where it comes out of the building from our bathroom, because we have a bathroom in there. I think it comes out the north wall. But the height of it and where all those drains are, I think it'd be tough to tap into. I also don't know. So I'm probably just gonna have to scope it, figure out where it's at. Well, we're not nearly close to getting this project off the ground. Just planning for the future, because, yeah, it's gonna be, I mean, just in machines alone, we're looking at $30,000. So,
Is this for your office?
yeah, for industrial size machines, though, like commercial grade. We do a lot of laundry. We usually use the laundromat, which I don't want to use the laundromat, it's expensive.
Sounds like there might be some permits in your future.
I have a feeling there will be, so. No, essentially it's 2 40-pound washers. So maybe 10 pounds, and by that's like the weight of the load, right? So, and your standard home washer is like 30, 25, 30, so not that much bigger. I don't think we're gonna have to expand sizes or anything like that, so.
Sounds like there might be a few permits in your future.
Yes.
Electrical, plumbing.
Well, that's the other thing too, I just checked the electrical, it all just works off standard switches. And that building has a boatload of power in it already. But I mean, I can literally just plug it into the standard outlet. It's pretty slick.
Yeah.
Big thing will be gas for the dryers, because we're not doing electric dryers, we're doing gas. So, and then probably water heaters. I'm not exactly sure. But we're starting the very infant stages, seeing if it's even something reasonable, and then we're gonna have to go home, so. Well, any updates city-wise? Nope, just here to hang out. Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, my goodness. Are you the only one there, Chelsea?
Yeah, I'm eating a cheeseburger.
I'm here, Dave.
Hi, Rod, but one is not a quorum.
I know.
Hold on to. Say again.
Cinta has school. She usually doesn't get to these meetings until about 4.
Okay. And I don't see that we have anything on, there's nothing for discussion at tonight.
No, I mean, we did a lot of our stuff already. Really, I just had it slated for airport and like some planning board updates.
Okay, I can give a little bit of an, actually, there's a 2-part update. One, I will have a full airport update. Well, I'll give you the things, but this will all be at the council meeting tonight too. Let me grab my cheat list so I don't forget something. First off, Bastion property. We are working with the Fed. Everything is out for bid. But by the time we hear it, the reality is, at the speed of the federal government, it's probably going to be spring before we go, but hopefully we will have everything in place so that the first decent weekend of spring we can go.
Excellent.
The airport thing, there is a letter that we got a week from Friday. I actually just got the hard copy on last Friday. A lot of the reason we were doing the master plan was that we were hoping to get accepted into what's called the AIP, or the Airport Improvements Plan.
Mm-hmm.
We got a letter from them on Friday that said, yeah, we're not going to accept Red Lodge into the Airport Improvements Plan.
Oh.
That logic is based on, let me rephrase it. What they put in the letter was based on the fact that they wanted to reduce the length of the runway, and then they felt it was too short of a runway to invest in. However,
Okay.
if we would like to look at additional airport properties that would support, say, a 6,000-foot runway, although they never did tell us what the runway is, but there's a chart that they use and they refer to, and I'll add it in the handouts. Although it probably comes up to a future meeting. Anyway, so the short version is that they're saying, we're not accepting you into the AIP program. However, in doing that, we still have to accept the master plan, so that because we use $250,000 worth of federal money to pay for it. So
Okay.
the question, pardon?
I said, okay.
So the discussion is, so then I'm updating my notes for tonight just because that way it'll be easier. So the question is, in the early days when they started this, they had some public meetings. We could still do public meetings, and I feel like, given the public input we've had, we could still accept input on that master plan, but ultimately we still need to do it. And the only part that's painful about that is people are going to turn that into a conversation about whether we should have an airport or not have an airport, not whether we're accepting the master plan that was put forward. And then the second one is if we're authorizing the mayor to sign the MOU. The MOU is going to we need to check and revisit the wording, because we had added some wording that was tied to being accepted into the master plan. Now we have to basically change that wording. So, and I think it's there, but we need to go back and verify it to make sure that the wording is okay, even if we don't get accepted into the AIP program. In other words, we can't say that we're going to do everything that's recommended for the AIP program if we don't have the money to do it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So we just have to basically make sure that we're not directing the airport board to do things absent any funding to do it. So I just need to double check that language. And then I think we'll bring both of those things kind of together in unison. We can do it as quickly or slowly. My mind is, Jody really didn't want to do that at the next meeting. And originally we were going to do it at this meeting, the MOU. But when I was talking to Lance on Friday, as we were trying to put together, this agenda and stuff, we ended up pulling it at the last minute and saying, let's go back and recheck the wording. And there was a meeting today at the airport board kind of discussing about what we're doing next. There is some state funding that we are going for and available. So there is still a grant. There is still a grant that's in place that we're going to use to recap the runway. That has already been put out to bid and won and awarded, but the weather changed on us, so that'll happen in spring.
Right.
So that's the airport. the Rocky Fork tear down, I think I already said, it's basically not going to be till spring. And that's just the federal government. You're not allowed to do the first thing until everything's in place. And there's actually some wisdom in that. But basically, they're getting all 3 bids in: the demolition, the remediation, which is their fancy word for asbestos and all that sort of stuff, is a separate bid. And then there's a bank reclamation project, which is all the riprap. I always get riprap and riffraff all mixed up. But the riprap project along the side, we have to have a final bid on that, and then we have to go in and basically get an amendment to the original project once we know what those dollar values really are. And that's just not going to happen overnight. But we're actively working it and actively moving it along, and it'll probably be, like I said, as soon as, and I think it'll be well before our tourist season, but nobody's going to go in there in July or in December and start doing tear down.
Yep, I
They
totally
could.
get it.
They could, but you know, we don't really control that ultimately. So realistically, I think it may be spring before it is done.
Okay,
The other
Good
thing
update.
that, pardon?
I was saying good update.
So the other thing is, and I'll bring it up here, and that is I got an email from Brent Moore that I will share with all of you, and it'll be in correspondence, that basically states that RV park, he doesn't feel that that RV parks belong in the city, nor is it a good use of, and he had a concern when he spoke to me that council was talking about it as a way to circumvent planning board or zoning or everything else. And I tried to say, no, this is just part of the process. But ultimately, even the stuff that comes in zoning has to get approved by council. So this is council giving their input so that planning board has some guidance to work with, because it is the council that sets policy, not the planning board.
Right.
And so I will share a letter, and we'll put that in correspondence. And I had a neighbor stop by and talk to me. I came home and ran out my dogs, and the good news is my dogs got an extra half hour outside. The downside was there was an electrical project that I was finishing up so that I don't get in trouble when my wife gets home. And it was time for the meeting to start. So that's why I'm remote and not there. The third thing that is kind of along that line is annexation conversations. So just at a very high level overview, if there is an annexation request, and we have informally a couple of them already, one north of town, one south of town. And these are basically not the ones that we investigated or were looking at or considering initially of the places where we already have sewer. These are new annexation requests that come in. The process that goes through is that there is a resolution of intent to annex. And in that, we set forth, our planning board sets in, and then council signs off on all the conditions that must be met in order to annex into the city. We do want to be careful and complete on those, because once you lay out the conditions, once all of those conditions are met, the city is obligated to then annex. So we say, go spend 2 million on this and $1 million on that and 5 million on that. We don't get to say no at the end of that.
Gotcha.
Related to that, there is a secondary request coming in from the Spires. The Spires wants to expand. When they had their petition to annex, the conditions were that they had to demonstrate and do the study and prove that we had the ability to handle the 400 connections they were proposing to add to the area. They've used about 200 of those connections, I think, so far. They are currently wanting to add 600 more.
All right.
The guidance and the approach that we have taken on that is we are basically handling it exactly the same way as somebody coming in wanting to do an annex. You know, we're going to say, in order for you to do that, you have to show that we have the capacity. Because if you add in all three of those, suddenly you're having a conversation about at what point do we need a proper sewer plant rather than something that we just treat and then put in the creek. Because right now we're limited to 1 million gallons a day. And while our stormwater project is extending that, it doesn't eliminate the fact that that's still a finite amount.
Right, that's a lot of toilets.
Yeah, that's exactly. So those are three things, and all of those are kind of in the land use category.
Yep.
And then,
honestly, all of these have been kind of on our agenda for future pieces.
yeah.
So that's all great.
And then the other thing that I'll probably discuss a little bit is the duplex tiny home, the stacked tiny homes that came into town. There was a paper on. And so what happened is, it's in R3. R3 is allowed a duplex, and they are allowed an ADU. And by state statute, we're not allowed to. There's a question about whether we're even allowed to require a conditional use. So I looked at it. Brian looked at it. Our planner looked at it, went through all the utilities. By the way, Courtney had already previously approved this while she was here. So they already had a letter of approval from last year. And when we looked at it, the way that we looked at it was basically, basically you're allowed to have a duplex in R3, and an ADU is automatically allowed, and it's not a conditional use, or it's not an anything. There's a question because the way our wording says we may have to, but I think that's actually been overridden by state statute. But there was another element that we missed. The way that we went ahead and said yes and issued the building permit was A, based on the previous approval, and B, there wasn't anything that said the oldest house on the property had to be the newest property. In other words, the way it was registered, the tiny homes stacked on top of each other are now the primary residence on the property. They still have to meet all the same setbacks and everything that's there. So that's just a duplex, which is allowed in R3. And the main property, that the previously existing property, because it is small enough that it meets all the requirements for an ADU, is now the ADU from a real estate prospect. So we have lots of properties that have 3 units on the same way. But what was noticed after the fact is that there is a statement that says that the primary structure, that the ADU is not allowed to be bigger than the primary structure. And so we missed that. So basically we have an ADU that's 900 feet and the primary structure is only 800 feet.
Okay.
So that's something
the house is now the new units that was proposed as an ADU.
Well, they're not the ADU. The way they presented it was that was the primary structure. The way they actually proposed it is, this is the primary structure, a duplex is allowed. Can this be the duplex? And there are no rules. It's basically the building codes that are applied. And as far as like, what are the steps allowed to look like, and what are the ceilings allowed to look like? But there's also some limitations on size wise, but that came in under the requirement. So there's 2 different sections of IBC, depending on whether it's a quote unquote tiny home rules or regular house rules.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
And in fairness, like I said, that literally is 100% of what the updates are at tonight's meeting. They're all land use and planning based for the most part.
Like, hear it all twice. Love it.
So I don't feel so bad now.
That's great. No, honestly, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that there's some headway on that. I'm curious to hear about the correspondence about the RV parks.
Yeah.
And then
I'll try to get in and get that printed before the next meeting so that I can hand it out tonight.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would like to read that. And again, I think just annexation, if we're getting into those topics and some of those requests that are already there, we could absolutely start to move that forward in the discussions. Mostly, I wanted to keep those airport updates because it sounds like we are getting close. So I want to keep lots of time for those discussions at these meetings.
Yeah,
That's part of the reason I did not move up annexations or MOUs yet, so.
yeah, so and there's yet another thing. And again, to put in a new airport is, I mean, the airport conversation and the annexation conversation, the reality is those are both 20-year forward-looking discussions, right? Neither one of those is something we do tomorrow, but both of them are things that we look at. How are we going to do it different 20 years from now?
Right. Absolutely. No, okay, cool. I appreciate those updates. Trying to think if there's really anything else that we can discuss. Cynthia, you'll get to hear it all again.
Perfect, so I don't feel like I missed out too much.
No, you really.
So what
didn't.
else was on
It's,
your, I don't have a copy of your agenda right in front of me. I apologize. What else was on your agenda today, or is that it?
We covered it.
Planning board update, but.
We wanted a planning door update, but Sandy's sick. RV parks and city limits, we wanted to have a discussion on that. Airport update, and then our standing topics for future discussion is annexation and MOU. So we have not our airport update. In terms of the RV parks and city limits, I'm actually glad that Brian is here. I just want to reconfirm, we currently have nowhere in our zoning where RV parks are allowed, correct?
Correct.
With one small asterisk. There was the Alpine property at the north end of town was given a conditional use permit that in essence, one could argue is an RV park. It probably should not have been given that additional permit initially. It was an error and a mistake when they gave it. However, they have met all of the conditions laid out. And so again, we're obligated to give it to them. So we have one that has some limitations to it.
Awesome.
But also, that one is kind of set up like a manufactured, subdivision, so like manufactured homes, so it can be,
Trail for.
it can also be a long-term
Wait,
RV rental.
Oh, wait, so you can actually put like a full, like.
are you saying like a single wide could be rolling up in there? Or are
No,
you saying
'cause
like-
We don't have
There's not
the
enough room.
sewer, right? But we don't have the
There's
sewer.
not enough room, but it's
I
not,
think-
I think.
Right-
there was
right
some
now
other
it's-
thing-
I was under the impression they got a well put in specifically for this.
No,
Nope.
well, they're on 6 water.
Okay.
And
The
then
only thing
sewer,
they don't have is they are not attached to city sewer because what they had
Okay.
for sewer doesn't meet the requirement. So basically it's dry RV parking.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's
Can't hear my.
kind of what I have in mind when I think of an RV park. Is,
But it's
But
zoned.
it's a total subdivision like any manufactured home area. So every one of those has its little tiny lot.
that is hysterical. Sorry, I should not laugh at that,
But,
but.
okay.
But that's
So
that's
it's
the mechanism
each one
that
of
they do
those-
it with.
Own lot? Like, as in like,
Spot.
if I look at
Each
this
spot.
map, and like, if I look at cadastral, each one of those spots.
Eventually, there's gonna be six little properties.
Okay, with their own little, okay.
Interesting.
Just like the motor, just exactly like just like the mobile home park. The difference is that your mobile homes are allowed to have wheels that you can drive in and drive off.
Interesting. Wild. I was not expecting that. Okay.
Okay, so there's that.
So that's one thing too, is like when if we're talking about RV parks, right? So I personally think it would be a great asset to the community, addition to our community, to have some here in town. I think it's an affordable way to make the most out of a lot. And I can understand when someone says that there's better uses, and sure, like, I'm sure there's absolutely better uses for a chunk of land than an RV park. But that being said, it's also someone else's land and they get to choose what to do with it, as long as they're within city parameters. So it's better to be doing something with it than just having a lot sitting there vacant. So that's my personal thought on it.
I mean, I look at it from the angle of, we only have so many, hotels in town
Mm-hmm.
that are up and running, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and short-term rentals. I mean, obviously, but there's a lot of people who prefer RV to their own. I mean, I'm kind of in the, when I travel, I don't want to stay in a short-term rental because I don't want to have to cook for myself. I don't want to have to clean up for myself. If I'm on a vacation and I'm staying somewhere, I want, all of it.
Yep.
And if I'm, traveling like with the RV, with pets, it makes sense to me. But like, you
Plus,
said,
I
at the
think
same
it's
time-
just a huge demographic, like, the RV
yeah, the short,
population is large.
right, the caravans and all the campers. I mean, I feel like a lot of people hear camping in city limits and it scares them.
Oh, for sure.
But what we're doing is all we're doing is permitting someone on their own personal property to allow it. Like, it's not like, we're not opening up the streets, we're not saying, here, go park in our gas station parking
Right.
lot. We're,
We're not filling the parks full of RVs, we're
No.
finding a place for people to,
like, private owned land, like, if you own a block and it's in city limits, and you wanna run an RV park,
yeah, they could even have to be a commercial, because again, I look at it as potentially a
Commercial.
commercial entity. So, like, that's kind of what I think that we should think about, is what zones do we think that would make the most sense? Is it residential lots, is it strictly commercial? Probably not in our downtown. I
yeah,
would-
no,
Yep,
probably not.
not in the
Probably have to
downtown.
have some pretty strict guidelines, limiting how many. I mean, yeah, there's so many things, but if we can.
Yeah, I would say that we do it by a square footage basis, where it's like, okay, you can have X amount of RVs up to X size for this many square feet on your lot.
Do we know if the zoning board or planning board have they discussed any of this?
I don't think.
Not recently. It has come up multiple times over the last multiple years, which is part of
Yeah.
what Brent's input was. But basically, after last year's thing where planning board went off and worked on some things and giving direction without council guidance, the new and improved is, let's find out what council is interested in, what council will approve, and then zoning, go work out the details for this. So you missed the first part of this, Chelsea. There were a couple of different parts to the conversation from Brent. One, that he did not think they're appropriate within city limits, and like I said, I'll get that letter printed. I'm sorry I did not make it there to print it this time for folks. The second one, he was concerned that the city was going to acquire the Eagles Nest and turn that into a city-owned and operated RV park. And I shared with him that, we had recently just gotten rid of the camping in the city right of way because that's not a business that the city wants to be in. But that people had said, well, what about people who are tired and come in and they need some place to camp? And that the discussion was, we could provide that opportunity through private individuals rather than the city doing that. And then his third concern was that what we were trying to do was circumvent planning, and that this wasn't going to go through planning, it wasn't going to go through zoning. And I said, no, this is just the start of the conversation.
Yeah. This is providing, is this something we're interested in at all before moving forward on? So again, I think it's one of those things that we might just want to put it up to, council, probably after the first of the year. Again, I feel like there's we only got 2 more meetings left after this. Like, one more in November and one more in December. And maybe kind of tie some stuff up and
Readjust it after the new year.
yeah, after the new year. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, we can talk about RV parks and city limits right now, but realistically, like, planning board is still cranking away on master plan, growth policy, all those things too.
Right, I don't want to.
I don't have time to be working on RV parks right now.
Right. Well, and this may, kind of go hand in hand with what their master plan looks like, so.
It's true.
Wait and see what they come up with, or.
Yep. Yeah, because I think, again, I think it'd be a great asset. I think that a lot of people travel in motorhomes anymore, RVs, campers, vans.
Yeah,
You
it's
name
across the
it.
board, and it's all across demographics.
So being able to provide an option for someone else to privately run one, fabulous. Like,
Right. I have friends who are opening them
zoning
up
for options.
in the county. I've got a handful of friends who are doing it in the county.
Oh, yeah,
So-
for
And
sure.
it's just fair, and we need to recognize that there are going to be people who have differing opinions. And,
for
and
sure,
many
agreed.
of those people will be convinced that they're right and everybody else is wrong, just like every other issue we deal with.
And that's why you just
Welcome to
open
my
it
life.
up with a conversation and hear facts and opinions across the board and have adult conversations. So, that's kind of my thought process on it. Other thing that could be a good talking point on that too is parking specifically. If we had RV parks available within city limits, people are gonna be a lot more likely to go drop their RV off at the RV park and then go walk around town versus trying to find parking
Parking
somewhere
for their own- it
downtown.
offers their own parking.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think, yeah.
That's another interesting, God, I mean, even just having a place where people could store their RVs in town. That's one of our number one questions we get, like with STRs, like, can I park my 20-foot trailer in front of the house? And, or can I bring my 30-foot RV and all these types of things and park it in front of your property? And it's just like, I mean, it's public parking, so I'm not gonna tell you you can't, but at the same time, I'm gonna tell you it's a risk.
Well, but I think it's realistic to say in our master plan and then to extenuate into our zoning and ordinances from council that, for instance, we don't want RVs longer than a certain length parked on Broadway in the business district.
Yeah,
Yeah, agreed. Okay.
100%.
So, no, it's definitely something that we should, I think that council needs to discuss, because like you said, everyone's gonna have their own strong opinion on it.
Yeah, I'm actually, again, that's part of the reason I'm interested to hear the letter of someone not in favor of it, because I haven't really heard anybody that's like opposed.
Well, and like the people who I hear from who are opposed are assuming we're talking about like,
Public right away.
yeah, public
Yeah.
right of way parking and it turning into old disaster,
Yeah,
right? Like, no, we're just allowing, but again, like,
we're allowing someone to set up a business and do it right.
yeah.
That's,
Like I said, I always bring it back to my own ability to have a tent set up in my backyard, whereas the laws currently, that ordinance was not allowing that, so.
you take that tent down.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I think, again, we can kind of approach that after first of the year. When are we, Dave, do you know this? Do you know when we're expecting the master plan and growth policy from planning?
I anticipate, so the other thing that is on tonight's meeting, that I didn't mention, I don't think I mentioned, or if I did, I apologize for the duplicate. They sent out the agenda to the folks who receive and distribute that over the weekend. And yesterday was a holiday, so this morning was when they first saw it. So the planning board meeting is they looked at delaying it, but it's basically going to be skipped and will resume as normal on the second Wednesday in December. And I'm adding another note. So that they have one more meeting of getting through that, and then they're going to have a draft to present, and then that'll be updated. So you're looking in the first part of next year, but the draft probably won't be till the end of this year or even the first part of next year, given the current calendar and skipping a meeting.
Gotcha. Cool.
And
Let's do that.
That's the master plan, not the downtown plan. There's two separate things that get very confused frequently.
Gotcha. Yep, downtown plan specific to essentially basically the revitalization plan
Yeah, and then master.
and our main downtown, if we expand our downtown, all that good stuff.
Gotcha.
And then master plan is just direction. Okay, well, I am not opposed to wrapping this up 20 minutes early, or
Yeah.
or if we're 20 minutes early.
Is there
Um,
any other questions from online participants?
Yeah.
I know I'm not the only one.
We got Rod here too, so, Mr. Rod.
I was
Just
saying
curious.
online one, sorry.
Not. Angela, do you have any
I-
questions before I let Rod speak?
No, I'm good. Thank you, though.
Thanks, Angela. Rod, the
Yeah.
floor is yours.
What's the update on the Eagles Nest property? Is there any movement on that, potential?
There are conversations on an ongoing basis, including today. But basically, the next funding cycle is next year. So we are still working with the applicant. We are pursuing basically the same sort of approach as we did on the Rocky Fork Inn. But we're working, the deadline for this year has come and gone. We are working to see which funding sources have money because that's the final stage of submitting the application. You basically have to wait until they say, we have this money, we are now accepting applications. But we have gathered and continue to gather most of that information. And we continue on with conversations with the property owner. And like I said, those conversations have occurred as recently as today.
Oh, okay,
Love that.
cool.
Now, that house between the Eagles Nest and the Rocky Fork, is that owned by the Eagles Nest?
Yep, it would be
It
incorporated.
is
into that.
also part of it and may or may not be included as part of, so there's actually multiple properties. The property owner can choose to include any or none or all but one. There have been conversations of all, and there have been conversations of keeping one outside and maintaining ownership rather than having it be included in the transaction.
Yeah, I thought that blue house was Campbell.
All right.
Yeah.
I think there was kind of a contract
Anything else, y'all?
between Campbell's and.
Eagles Nest.
I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
All right, I'll see you in a couple minutes.